My name Stefan Gillich, right? And I want to talk a little bit on the power of context. And obviously, that has a lot to do with this challenge here, which is about retrieval-augmented generation and how we enhance AI with it. Thanks for the invite. Um, and a bit on myself, right? So first of all, while you can look up my LinkedIn profile just under my name, um, I wanted you to know that I'm in the business for more than 30 years now. My education is computer science, and I grew up basically always being interested in the edge, sometimes the bleeding edge of the technology. So I spend a lot of my time, as you can see on that picture, in what we call high performance computing. A lot of people understand under high performance computing the challenge that you have to have high performance for certain tasks, and those tasks have been for a long while simulations. That has been something which has been driving me at university already. And there was one other little thing which was quite some theory back then at my university days, which was called artificial intelligence. And there were little people knowing about that. While there were some discussions amongst people interested in computer science, obviously it was very theoretical, but I followed that throughout my professional life, on and off, I would say. I went through the AI winter, and those people who are my age, 30 years in the business, they know what I'm speaking about. But recently, well, quite recently, 7, 8 years back, I came back into AI because obviously the AI winter was over. And as I have been following this, I came back into that. I had several positions around AI within the company I'm working for, which has been Intel for a long time. For this presentation here, I have decided to do that on my own. So this is not Intel view, it's my view. Obviously, as I work for a company, that is always something where you are associated with, right? So let's dive into that. And thanks again to the Time to Act group to invite me for that. So the title is about context and AI. So why has this something to do with each other? I think it's central. Um, there's no real understanding, no real reasoning without context. And in the history of AI, more and more context was embedded into the algorithms, or what we call today models, if you use deep learning as the technology. But independent of any kind of technology, traditional classical machine learning, you always have to introduce context. And the context introduction is usually done with the up-to-date technology we use today with training. And then, obviously, when we train models, that is done once. It's pretty compute intensive. That's the link to the high performance computing I'm coming from as well. Um, but also on the other side, you do that on a context and a databases, which is at some time fixed. Now, if you want to adopt to changes in the database, you can do that with fine tuning, which is a lot of people are doing that, which might be sufficient for your purpose. But if you really want to be up to date with the data, which is changing daily, maybe even every second, then you have to use other methods to do that. So context is key in AI, independent of the technology you're using to really introduce that context into AI. Now, then let's shed a little bit light on the other elephant in the room, the enterprise. Enterprise companies, big or small, they got interested into AI because they have one thing, which obviously is the challenge here. They have a lot of data and they want to get out the value of the data. So business intelligence and other algorithms to do that and to data mining are existing for a long time. But AI, in terms of learning from data, has and had and has still a big promise into that. And there's lots of implementations out there. But there's a number of things which I would like to remark on enterprises versus the AI technology scene. So enterprises, they like to be predictable. They are usually mature companies. Well, they're startups as well, but yeah, there's also mature companies out there. They have a lot of data, but they are concerned about the security and confidentiality of that data. And then there's lots of stovepipe data around, which is local somewhere, and it's in certain formats which are not common, and all of those things. So this is what the enterprise is dealing with. Now, we are coming from the AI technology side, and we're used to frequent change, right? If you just go back the 8 years, I'm in 100% AI-driven jobs. Man, there's lots of things which have changed, right? In terms of the technology being used, um, definitely in terms of people interested in the number of data we can, volume of data we can handle, lots of change. And there's one or two other things which are being common about AI. There's a lot of public data used. There's open models. All these models, LLMs today, are trained on the internet, which is supposed to be open data. Well, there are some disputes about how you can actually use data for training, still open. And it's also one other thing from a technology perspective. A lot of the compute as well as the data is based on placing that into the cloud. Now, there's some contrary things between the enterprise and the AI we are seeing there. What's actually needed from the enterprise side is privacy on data, security on data, and also the results plus the actual model, which is influenced by data as well. And then there's other concerns, and you can read that in certain market research data, which is plenty. There's a lot of concern about compliance these days. You know that the EU has an AI Act, right? Other countries are doing more or less of that, and there's compliance requests on just the generic sets of data as well. So that's a big worry by the companies using AI, whether they can be compliant in different aspects, whether to the AI Act as well as other law which is out there just for data compliance as well. And the second key thing here, or fourth key thing here on my list actually, is the specificity of the solutions and the accuracy of results. We all know about hallucination in big LLMs, which is just one example of the problems AI has sometimes here. And that's linked also to the quality of data which is around. So if something is trained on low quality of data, you can't expect a high level of accuracy and specificity out of that. So that's the problems we are seeing between AI as a technology and the implementation in the enterprise. Now, if you look into that developments we are seeing in enterprise AI in a bit more detail, but still kind of simplified, I want to make a few points here of what we are seeing today and what's starting today and what I think we will see in the future. And by the way, I'm presenting this right now. We have a little bit of time for discussion after this. So if you have any questions, please hold them because I can't see them in general right now. So let's get back to this. Today, everybody is speaking about so-called AI co-pilots, right, from whatever vendor. And as we know, a lot of that models are driven by public data. But if you are using it as a co-pilot on your personal task within your personal tasks, or what are you doing in your company, you're at least adding personal data to that, which adds already to the complications here, as we've seen before, and the worries about leaking personal data into an AI model. Now, what we are seeing in the enterprise is a lot of interest in using different models working together as so-called AI agents, and then adding, obviously, what we call domain data. So an example for that is a department in an enterprise who is not only using AI for the tasks the persons in this enterprise have, but within a domain, within a work group, adding more data, obviously, to drive AI agents working together there. And then when we look out into the future, and a lot of people are discussing this already, and first test implementations maybe exist, is to broaden that to the complete enterprise. So really to automate a lot of functions in the enterprise around whatever the enterprise does with so-called AI functions in a multi-agent construct. But if you want to do that, you have to add more and more data and more context on the enterprise level. So the capabilities go up, obviously the capabilities of the models as well, but it's all kind of driven on access to the data as well. So this comes together. I hope you get the point I want to make here. Now, if you look at that, so how can we resolve those differences and those challenges we have between enterprise requirements for AI-driven applications and the AI technology as it is today? So retrieval-augmented generation is a topic to bring context into AI of my talk today. So can we use RAG to do that? That's the question. Now, let me ask you one question here, which you can think about. Since when was the term RAG actually used, right? I've said I've followed AI for a long time. We all know AI is driven by data. That's very clear. But the term RAG came up not so long ago, and the technology behind it as well, which we understand under RAG today. And similar technologies have been existing. Now, if you ask the internet, right, you come up with one answer here, and there's different answers to that as well. There's a paper which has been published in the 2021 timeframe by a team around Patrick Lewis, which you can look up under that link here, obviously, where this term retrieval-augmented generation was used, I think, the first time, and basically coined as a abbreviation for a certain technology. I think there has been others doing similar things as well. So your mileage might vary. It's just interesting that this is not so long ago, right? And you can see things are changing very fast in AI, but we have to keep in mind that some things are stay in context as well. Okay, so what is retrieval-augmented generation? I think I don't need to tell you that, because otherwise you wouldn't be here participating in a contest and a challenge around using RAG. So obviously you all know how it works and how we basically can inject up-to-date data into LLMs which have been trained quite some time before. What we get through that is actually satisfying some of those requirements we have seen before, which we get from the enterprises. And within my various jobs in AI, I have talked to hundreds of enterprises, even more, with their requirements on AI. And I can tell you that a lot of the enterprises are looking into that technology right now to solve those challenges. And the key challenges here is obviously the accuracy, which we can improve by linking an LLM, which has been trained before for basic capabilities with up-to-date data, right? So that is a key thing. The explainability is another thing, which is very important when we look at requirements coming from regulation, and also the requirements coming from the enterprises as well, in terms of, can I explain what my AI is doing? Can I trace it as well? And be sure that there are no bad things happening in whatever form or shape that might be. That is a key question as well, and RAG technology can help to do that as well. And last but not least, can we actually enhance security with RAG? I think yes, because you can separate more of the data out of the model in a way when you use RAG. It's not easy and it's not automatic, but it's doable, I would say. And you're the experts here. So let me shed a little bit more light on those problems. So I think it's very clear that if you want to use AI in the enterprise, proprietary data needs to be part of the context. And that's the biggest worry all the enterprises have. If I'm using an open service like those which have been mentioned today already a lot, right, by those cloud service providers or software as a service providers, you are running a risk when you share proprietary data because you don't know, is that proprietary data going into the model? How is it actually linked with the model? Data leaks can happen. Adversarial attacks can happen. Regulatory challenges can happen. In general, there's a lot of confidentiality concerns. Now, as we know, using the cloud is the easiest way to use AI. But there's a lot of companies talking about building in-house solutions right now. Now, if you're building in-house solutions on AI, obviously you have a bigger challenge to run all the setup, but then you are in control of the setup. But it basically hands over the responsibility of being up to date and being operational with an AI, an LLM running, has several challenges to implement. Now, there's one thing I wanted to show you that you might have heard about, which is not solely on RAG as a technology for AI, but in general, helping enterprises to build their own AI solutions. And there's a Linux Foundation project, which is called the Open Platform for Enterprise AI, which has a lot of prominent members, Intel as well, but also AMD, SAP, lots of companies who are concerned about AI usage in the enterprise. And what OPEA has on its task list is basically to simplify the generative AI adoption and basically enable enterprises to shorten the time to production using AI solutions. And that is done in several ways, but one key thing is to build so-called frameworks of building blocks. So not everybody has to try out everything to make it work and work especially together on their own. This organization and the companies working within that Linux Foundation project can actually do that. And with that, there's also the production of so-called blueprints and doing assessment on solutions as well. And one of the blueprints, or some of the blueprints, which RAG is working, which OPEA is working on, is associated with retrieval-augmented generation. You can go to the OPEA webpage and get more information about that. There is this picture taken directly from the webpage there, which shows some more complicated RAG flow, which is basically implemented in a so-called pipeline in a blueprint, which is produced by OPEA. Why do I highlight this? I guess you guys are looking into ways to use RAG, right? That's why you're in the challenge. And I wanted to be sure that you have heard about this effort there, maybe to consider that for your own solutions or even contributing to OPEA, because I think it's a key thing to produce open solutions within AI. And OPEA as an organization has absolutely that challenge or is trying to answer that challenge because open solutions, as we see throughout the history of IT, have certain advantages, definitely. Now, let me basically round out the things I've been talking about by looking a little bit on the platforms. Now, I come a bit from the hardware side, obviously, and where you bring AI, the hardware and software together. Um, so, which kind of platforms can you use, and what's the what's the in and outs with that? So in general, you can look at on-premise or off-premise solutions. A lot of AI is off-premise today in public clouds or private clouds, but there's more and more desire for those reasons I've been formulating before: security, privacy, and more control to do that on-premise as well. And it's not just in the data center. There's lots of AI happening in devices, right? In factories, uh, to the very much connected to machines. There's AI happening in cars. We all know that. So you need to do a certain part of the AI, uh, mostly the inferencing part, very close to the data source. And you can also do this with the devices we use most of the day, with the PCs. Now, what I think is key here are three things. You need solutions which are secure for the enterprise, definitely, but also for private use. They should offer you choice in terms of the hardware being used. As we have choice today for doing our other tasks, we want to have that choice as well for running our AI workloads, right? Either locally on a PC, on a specialized device, or in a data center, be it private or open. Um, so with that, we get actually the three things here, which I think are key for doing the solution in terms of the hardware software stack, is an open stack in hardware and software, which is secure and offers this choice between on and off-premise solutions using different technologies, using CPUs, which are in AI enhanced, using GPUs, which is one of the platforms of choice today for AI, or specialized AI accelerators, which a lot of companies are doing today. The choice obviously depends on your requirements in terms of performance, in terms of trust level, in terms of security level, a lot. So just wanted to highlight that because sometimes people take it for granted. You just go to some cloud and use it. Obviously, that's an easy choice, but you might want to reconsider that for cost, performance, or definitely for security reasons. Now, let me round it out and have a little bit of look into the future together with you. Obviously, it's a complex environment we're in, but one key thing here is AI lives on data, right? There's no usage of AI without the data um, behind, and data is context. So context and contextual AI, I think, is very much glued together. Now, there's some people, and you see that quote here from a paper which has been published on medium.com. RAG is dead, right? Obviously, there's people out there who say, yeah, we don't need to use RAG anymore because, for instance, we can use long context models. So millions of tokens of context length is what people say, hey, why should I use RAG? Well, I'm saying if you do that context embedding into the model, your model is contaminated with the data. And some people might have some arguments about that and say, yeah, that's exactly not what I want to do, to contaminate the data with the model with my data, which is proprietary. Can I keep it more separate? And RAG obviously opens up more capabilities there than I think long context models do. You might want to discuss that. There's other methods which have been either reinvented, like reinforcement learning, right? I've been looking into that already a long time back. So people are speaking more about reinforcement learning again in that context. So that's nice. Bidirectional retrieval and other technologies. Obviously, we are not a standstill, definitely not in AI. That's great. But there's two things I wanted to give you on the way before the discussion and before you go off and compete here in the challenge. Um, I think it's key that we recognize that context is king, not only in AI, but definitely in AI. RAG is one key technology to do that. There's other relevant methods, but definitely RAG, and therefore that challenge makes a lot of sense. And my last remark is actually towards you. I think you and companies who are taking care of the implementations, the software hardware stack, the support around AI solutions are needed. When I go out there and speak with enterprises, big or small, SMEs, whoever wants to use AI, they all have one problem, amongst others, is who is helping me to implement that, to maintain it. And I'm in contact with a number of companies who are doing that. I guess this is the core of your business as well. And with that, I wish you good luck in the REC challenge. I want to thank you, the organizers, and you for listening to me, giving me that opportunity to speak to you. And if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them, and we can have a little bit of discussion around what I've been saying or any kind of general questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks a lot. And folks, please don't hesitate to ask questions on the Discord. We'll copy them here. And I already have a couple of questions for you when people heard that you're coming and they were quite interested. So a couple of questions from the others earlier. So Timofey earlier asked that he's interested what on the high level is the level of not adoption, but even understanding from the business in Europe, from the companies, from the large enterprises about the RAG. Because like from the outside, from the people who are not working that deep with the B2B or B2B to B2B, it looks like business is very risk averse and they don't want to touch AI. Because it means we're uploading our data to the cloud, it's going to be leaked, we're going to be have compliance problems. And at the same time, if you look at the smaller companies, they are going all in. They're doing the multi-agent systems, they're using reasoning, they're using all the latest technology. So how, from your perspective, and you have a lot of contacts and a lot of experience, so is it true that the average large business in Europe is very risk averse and avoids AI at all costs, or is there something going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's a tendency for that to being risk adverse. If you look at the enterprise landscape in Europe, you have a lot of traditional companies who could use AI a lot, and they certainly want to do that. But first of all, they have a concern about the privacy of their competitive advantage data, right? And that is key. So there's companies around who say, well, we will never use a cloud service, a cloud-based AI service. We need to do it on our own. I have a number of companies who have that firm opinion, and they will never go to the cloud. So they have a problem of needing to implement AI solutions. And that's big companies, but there's also small companies. It's not only big companies who have that concern. That's what I've learned as well. We have a lot of smaller companies in Germany who have a lot of, let's say, trade secrets around building stuff, and they are equally concerned about that, and they tell me the same thing. On the other side, you have people and companies who are more open about that, who say, okay, well, I have my data on the cloud already since a while, so why shouldn't I use AI? But what they all have in common is they have a need for protecting their competitive advantage and the data around that. That's number one. And number two, which is seen more and more by the companies as well, is the compliance on the coming or existing AI Act, right? Which a lot of people see as central, so they don't risk anything. Do they know about RAG? Well, some of the IT departments or interested companies, if they are closer to the technology, they do, but most don't care, honestly. They say, okay, I need somebody, either my own IT department or somebody external, solve the problem for me. I don't care what the technology is, and the technology is changing too quickly for me anyway. I want somebody to help me. And this is where I see a big challenge and a market as well, right? That's why I was initially interested in participating here and seeing you guys compete, because what you're doing is requested a lot out there and is needed, because AI is fine, but if people are not using it, it's not useful.
Thank you. And to continue the topic of the local models, so folks, when you're filling the forms for your submission, there'll be a couple of checkboxes below, like, am I using the local model? And if you're using the local model, please don't forget to mention that model and click the checkbox, because we're going to have a separate leaderboard for the local only models. It will not go for the prizes, but it will help everybody, including the enterprises, to see what is the state of the art. And in the previous round of the Enterprise Direct Challenge, people were coming to the winners of the leaderboard, maybe starting businesses, maybe hiring them away. So this is a real nice opportunity first for collaboration, and also to demonstrate the world that local models are actually already quite usable, especially if we're talking about the Quants or DeepSeek R1 Distillate 70B, which is wonderful for the reasoning tasks. Another question, Stefan, if I may ask. So
Sure.
there is a recent trend that started from probably December, that there is a plateau of the LLM capability, which you can get with more training, because then the LLMs get too hard. And now OpenAI started saying that we'll give you reasoning models. They take more time to think, and then they provide better quality results. And then there is also Deep Search, there is O1 Pro, and then everybody else is starting to roll out their own reasoning models. And essentially, this means that you get answer that is higher quality, but there is more time being passed. And what do you think about this trend, and how can it play out in the enterprises? Meaning that companies can say, or providers can say, yes, you're going to get good results, but it will take 5 hours to get it, or it will happen overnight. So is this something relevant for the businesses? Do they even care?
I think they care. When I brought this up earlier, one key concern by the enterprises is the quality of the answers they get from any kind of thing they give the AI as a challenge. They need to make sure it's accurate, it's the right answer in a way that we can judge, like you would expect from a human team to give the right answer, right? So they see it the same way. Can they wait for 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever is required? I think it depends on the task. There's things where it's not really acceptable to do that in your daily life. If you enter something into a chat window, you don't want to sit there for 5 hours waiting, right? And that's more the simple problems. But if there's more complicated problems, I think it's very acceptable to wait that time, right? If I compare that with the other area where I'm very experienced with, right, simulation, like for weather forecast, for airflow around an airplane, a car, a crash simulation, people are used that this takes some time and they don't need it. I mean, the engineering principle in the automotive industry of doing some changes and then letting the simulation go overnight is quite used a lot. So is it acceptable for these guys to wait 5 hours or whatever, 2 hours to get some answer back? Yes, it is. Would they like to get it back faster? Absolutely, right? It's always better to get an answer more quickly, but I think it is very a key differentiator. What is the quality, reliability of the answer? Can I guarantee there's only a small chance for hallucinations? Is everything considered? So there's a big interest in that. And therefore, answering your questions, yes, I think it's something people are very interested in getting more and more reasoning in that way, as you described it, from the AI models.
Thank you. And actually, you mentioned like the hallucination and explainability. And one question that we get asked a lot in the community is like LLM is essentially a black box. we don't know what is happening inside. We can try to trace some of the weights, but this will not be definitive. This is not something that you can take to the court.
Yeah.
But at the same time, large language models are crucial in doing the reasoning. So have you seen any patterns in how enterprises approach the explainability of complex systems? What can be evidence for them? Like if a company comes to them and says, hey, we have a system that is accurate. But the enterprise on the other side has, but I need to have a proof. If something goes wrong, I need to have a trail of evidence that was explainable, that it was good enough. So in your experience, are there any patterns in what enterprises accept as explainability? What kind of proofs do they accept from the authors of such systems?
Yeah, that varies. I came across several startups recently who are in that business, if you will, helping companies to basically improve the explainability and on the other hand, which is very linked to explainability, is the risk handling as well. Is your LLM saying something bad, which can be held against the company? That's a key concern of many using it just for a chatbot to answer customer questions, right? So there's a number of companies out there who do that either through systematic testing or trying to go deeper into the model and doing some proofs, which is very hard, as you said, to do that. But so the nature of an AI is actually quite adverse to doing that proof because, as you say, it's a black box. It learns on its own. Whatever technology you're using, specifically deep learning, it's next to impossible to do a real proof on that. I mean, not even on traditional software that is very possible. I would say an AI, it's an illusion to do 100% proof, I think, in most cases. But RAG actually opens up an opportunity here to do something more systematic about it because when you have an LLM which is trained on whatever data you don't even know, right? Most people don't know that. It's the internet, whatever, and plus something secret source data. You can't prove anything, right? You can just try it out and say, fine. And if you add your own data in a way that it's controllable, with RAG, for instance, then you at least have control of that data, which adds to the explainability as I've mentioned before in my presentation, very much as you can say, okay, I can check the data because that's data I completely control. I can't control the LLM, but I use the LLM basic functions and rely on that LLM can speak and do the basic reasoning, but then I rely on my data to make it capable of really answering the specific question. So I think that's why I think RAG is a real opportunity to increase the acceptance and usability of AI as well.
Thank you. And now one more question, slightly on a different tangent from the community. So most of our participants are usually small teams and individual entrepreneurs. There are a couple of high teams that are competing as anonymous submissions, but the majority are small, like pretty much enterprises in Europe. So like most 80% of the enterprises, these are small teams. And the question that interests them a lot is that everybody wants to build and sell an AI-driven product. And usually people are searching under the lamp and they're trying to focus on the technical solutions, but the market is crowded. And from your unique perspective, what are currently the areas of potential AI adoption in an enterprise that are maybe niche, maybe they are not obvious for the tech guys, but that are interesting, that are underserved, that don't have enough people trying to solve problems in these areas?
Yeah, I think there's plenty. AI, I think we in AI, we might think, okay, this is around for a long time and people are using it. But if you go out there and speak to companies, big and small, they're all interested, but the number of companies who have successfully implemented it for real business is pretty low, right? So I think you can't basically say, hey, there's one area which is key for AI and the other is not, because I think it's such a basic technology. I'm always comparing it when press or somebody else from a basic perspective asks me on, wow, AI, why is it so important and how important is it? I always compare it to the internet. Sure, it's not the same level of technology, but the internet is in every application today, and we don't even notice it, right? It's a granted thing, but everything is connected, and only in very rare cases it's not connected, and then applications are suffering. So it will be the same with AI applications. We just take it for granted that AI is used. I mean, even in the application we're using right now, video conferencing, it's used a lot, and I think most people don't even know that it's used in there. So that's what I'm seeing out there. That's what I'm seeing out there. Sorry.
Let me just try to mute that. Yep, I muted everybody, including you. Sorry. Could you please unmute? So could you please? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I realize. Yeah. So would I highlight a specific area as interesting? Well, what I found interesting is also coming from my background of HPC and simulations. What I found interesting is the combination of physical simulations, like what we have been using, for instance, for weather forecasting, right? So you use a lot of data points and data grids, and then you have certain physical formula which you can numerically simulate, and that is a lot of performance you put into that, and then we get a exact weather forecast. The finer we make the grid of the data points, the better it gets, but the number of data points plus the algorithms then require a very big system. So they have lots of servers in their background doing that. But you can improve that actually by using AI without using any kind of physical connections, but just using the data over the last 100 years they have. And you can do forecasts just basically using AI. And there's other areas where it's similar, but the interesting part is how do you bring that together? How do you actually use the knowledge we have on the physical things, on weather, on airflow, on whatever, which is complicated, together with the experience we have with the data around it, weather data, data on materials, data on what works in aerodynamics and things like that, and bring it together. And there's plenty of examples how this has been done successfully in the industry, but also in research. For instance, one time I've been very close to the CERN in Geneva, who are doing particle research, and it's being used there already, AI as well as simulation, together in kind of one research task.
And if you were, but physical simulation, it's a very complex field. And I'm pretty sure that you need a relatively large team in order to approach it successfully and then to deliver it to the end users. But if you were to give advice for small teams, like for a couple of people that are working on AI solution or that want to build a rack-based solution and to help companies get value. So are there any industries that you'd advise to take a deeper look at, because like they're underserved, there is a money on the table?
Yeah, I think there's companies out there who do, let's say, services for other companies by trying to do optimizations on certain things, like energy consumption, like advising about certain properties within a company, right? So they handle a lot of data, but they need to be you need to make sure that this data doesn't leak, right? So it's not the company's data alone, but other companies' data, which is handled by service organizations. So it's like people who give advice on taxes, give advice on as I said, energy consumption of companies, on certain other things, and they have a lot of data, and they are looking for solutions to basically advise better on that data they get from their clients. But they have one of the highest requirements on confidentiality of that data, because it's a catastrophe if your own data leaks, but it's an even bigger catastrophe and will basically kill the company, service company, if the data of the client leaks. And there comes the requirement for local solutions, right? Because if you don't trust the cloud, right, which many of those companies don't, and not only those companies, but the companies who give the data to the service companies I'm speaking about. Sorry, I'm a bit abstract here, but I don't want to hint in a specific direction, but maybe you get what I mean. Then they have a huge problem, right? And that's where I see a lot of requirements on, okay, how can I absolutely make sure this is a shielded system, is not connected to anything, so I can't leak data, and I can still use a big LLM or maybe a small language model as well, if it's usable. This is the opportunity for people who have the background in RAG technology and bringing solutions together, even if it's very small teams. So I see a lot of the technology being driven by startups, basically, right? And startups always start small by definition, and there's an opportunity there, definitely, in those companies, but not limited to that.
Thank you very much for the insights, and are really interesting ones. Now, before we move forward with the PDF generation, are there any questions from the people currently in this Teams call that you want to ask? Because I've been asking already previously gathered questions for Stefan from the other communities. So that's your chance to ask if you want. And otherwise, we'll do the seed generation. Yes, Dennis, please.
Dennis, go ahead. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself, I think.
And I don't think I can unmute him.
Otherwise, just type your question into the chat in the Teams call.
My apologies. Am I heard?
Here you go.
Yes.
Excuse me, there were technical issues from my side. Yeah, I might want to maybe clarify one thing. Maybe you know better, as you are a pretty experienced manager and specialist. I have heard some rumors in Europe regarding the entrepreneurs and business owners who desire to build some omni systems like Jarvis from Iron Man, for example. If you know the association, the all-knowing, omnipotent AI assistant, which will operate with every single bit of data of the company's client regarding the spatial, personal, economical, financial, and other data. And this assistant will be present either in mobile devices or elsewhere, which will be able actually, I don't know, to photograph some house and to send documents to some institution and claim it as the current property of the client. Are those projects possible in Europe now, or do they require some changes in legislation or some technical approaches from different angle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty generic question, right? So I can't specifically say this, what you described is possible or not. And I think you need definitely more consideration on the legal side of that, right? Because there's several things involved. There's just the certain legislations in the EU and the various countries, which are then different as well, on just the data privacy involved, without even looking into AI as the application which is driving that. And then if you look into the AI Act, you have to classify your applications, whether they can be of harm by the definition of the AI Act or not, and are in certain classes, right? I think there's a number of literature out there already going to that. So that's the two key things you have to consider for such things. If you handle personal data, if you handle company data, you're always in that risk. It's not impossible because you have to just protect it and make sure you have all the necessary approvals to share that data you are able to share. So that's not, on the one side, it's not a new problem, but there's things added from like new regulatory considerations, and they differ from country to country. Luckily enough, we have something more common in the EU right now, but if you go outside, it might be quite different. And then the usual things which you have on data privacy. So answering such a question, right, whether is this application possible, is quite a task, I would say. And that's the other area where I think the legislation has a lot of problems right now, bringing things like the AI Act into practical considerations. I mean, it was difficult enough to get that agreed between the experts, but now implementing it is even more complicated, right? So it's not easy, right? But we need to go through that. And from a technology perspective, we are mostly technology people here, I guess, not legal people. I think our opportunity is to make sure that we have the technology to keep data secure, is very key in the AI world.
Thank you very much.
Can we say that essentially being able to run the models locally on an isolated box that is disconnected from the internet, from the outside world, pretty much solves a lot of questions in one go?
Yeah, it doesn't solve every question, that's for sure, right? Because the data has to come from somewhere as well. And as I said, you need to have the context, so you're in the problem again. But at least you can make sure those operations which you're doing with very specific data, like with using a RAG on a model which comes from the outside, but you're not injecting the data into the outside while using the model, it can solve some problems, definitely. And that's why people are more and more interested in using RAG on a local machine, because that's the possibility. Yeah. If you have to fine-tune a model, I mean, only very few organizations have the capability of doing that within their infrastructure. Yep. Big companies, yes, and they have been using that before they looked into RAG or RAG became usable technology. But now with RAG, you can even do that on your own PC, right? It's very easy. We have shown that a couple of times on trade shows. You use a PC AI enabled. You inject certain PDFs or Word documents or Excel sheets on your own data. It doesn't go outside of the machine, but it's still used by the LLM. Or in the case of a PC, it's probably a small language model, but they are useful. We can show that.
And I hope that we'll have quite a few submissions this year that use the local models and that we use the local model in the submission form. And then we'll be able to see how actually did local models go in comparison with the most public open models. And if they can get, for example, to the top 10 responses on our RAG challenge. Thank you very much, Stefan, for your time. And what do you say? Shall we generate random seed now?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I wish you all good luck in the challenge, and I'm interested in the outcomes, definitely.